In this session, we're going to be talking about record types. Let's remind ourselves what the purpose of record type is in Salesforce. Record type allows us to create record using certain set of fields that we need. Okay. It also allows us to create the records faster without worrying about unnecessary fields that we don't need to worry about. All right. So we have a scenario. We actually have a custom student object where it can store information about domestic students and as well as international students. All right. So if I, for example, go to our custom student tab and click on this new button and try to create a new student, then we see some information here. There are some fields here that apply to both student types, international student and also domestic student, right? But there are some fields here that only apply to domestic student. For example, social security number. We don't have social security number for international students. They may not have that information when they are getting admitted, right? So we're not going to show this field on the page layout that belongs to international students. Similarly, we have these fields over here that transcripts, evaluation received. Transcripts are evaluated only for international students. Visa is given to only international student. English language proficiency only is applicable to international students. Residency status, this residency status can apply to both international student and also as well as domestic student. So what the requirement is imagine that we have a users, all right, we have a users, they are saying that when they want to create a domestic student record, they don't want to see fields such as these that are related to international student, right? And vice versa. When they try to create international student record, they don't want to see fields that are related to domestic students, such as social security number. All right. And also this pick list value too. If it is international student, then we only have to see these fields, right? F1 student visa, M1 and J1 student visa. These values needs to be displayed if the user is creating an international student record. Also, if the user is creating a domestic student record, citizen and permanent resident values needs to be displayed. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of the fields that the users don't need depending on what record type they are creating, right? So right now, if you want to, for example, create international student, you get one page, one big page with all the fields, right? And the problem with that is sometimes the users, when they are creating an international student or domestic student, let's say they are creating a domestic student, sometimes they can accidentally try to populate this information as well, right? That creates inefficiency. That creates inefficiency, and it takes, in that way, the users will be taking more time to create the new student record. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of these fields. We will only provide these fields if the user is creating an international student. All right. And we will also show this social security number field um, only when a user is trying to create a domestic student record. So how do we do that? First, what we need to do is when we create record types and page layouts, and then it has multiple parts that is related to it, right? So what we're covering is we're covering record types, right? So the step one is we need to create page layouts. Okay. Page layouts, we're going to create page layouts with the necessary information. So if we have to create how many page layouts do we need? We need 2 page layouts. So we need 1 page layout for international student and 1 page layout for domestic student, right? So on this domestic student, and then we're going to say international student page layout. All right? So that's going to be this one, and then this is going to be for domestic student. Page layout. Sometimes you could use 2 words for it, sometimes just 1 word, page layout. Either one would work. So that's going to be first step, create page layouts. Okay, step 1 is create this page layouts. On this page layout, we're going to have fields that are related to domestic student, and on this page layout, we're going to have fields that are related to international student. How do we create page layouts? We know that, right? So we go to Object Manager, right? Object Manager, and then navigate to the student object, and then click on the page layouts button. And if you want to start over, you go to the setup, click on that setup, then click on Object Manager and search for student object. This student object is a custom object. Click there and then go to page layouts. Right now it has 1 page layout, all right? 1 student page layout. And we need to create 2 more, because this is the default one that is created, okay? That's created for it. Every time you create an object, a default page layout gets created and given to it. This is the default one. But we need 2 custom ones, domestic and international. So let me create this domestic student page layout first. Let me go back, and then I'm going to click on New, give a name. So it is asking us, do you want to use an existing? I will select yes. I'm going to, by this selection, what I'm doing is I'm going to take the existing student page layout and modify it, remove or keep the fields that I need for this page layout. Okay, I'm going to say domestic student page layout and click save. Now, if we are talking about the domestic student, then we know that we don't need these fields that are related to international student, right? So we are talking about domestic student page layout. And whenever a user is trying to create a domestic student, they don't need to be shown these fields. For example, this field is related to international students. So we're going to remove that. We're going to remove visa number, visa issue date, expiration date for visa, English proficiency level, because that does not apply to domestic. Residency status, that does apply to domestic. And also it applies to international students. So we're going to have to keep that, okay? Social security number, it applies to domestic students. So we're going to keep that. And every other field is applicable to domestic student. So we will keep it, okay? We will keep it. And then we're going to click on quick save. So what we did so far, we have already created this field, right? We created this one. Done. We created one page layout for domestic student. Now we need to do the same thing for international student. Again, we'll go back to our student, object manager, student object, and then page layouts. Click on the page layout link, and now you see that you already have one. Now we need to create a new one. Click on new. I'm going to select the master page layout, the default one that was originally created, and then modify it as needed. So what is going to be the name of this page layout? So the name is going to be international student page layout, right? So let's get that information, paste that here, and click save. If a user is trying to create an international student record, what fields do they need to see? They need to see all these fields, but they don't necessarily need to see the social security field. We could remove it. And if there are other fields here that are only applicable to domestic students, such as we don't have it yet, it could be fields such as driver license or something that is only applicable to domestic student. So we would remove those fields, okay? We are keeping these fields here, the visa information, because those are applicable to international student, all right? Let's rearrange them a little bit. That's about it. So I'm going to click on save. If you navigate back to page layouts, we're going to see that we have two custom page layouts that we have created. So what's next? What was next? Does that complete our job? It does not yet complete our job. If you go to here to the Students tab and select any list view and click on New button, you are still going to see all those fields. We're still seeing all those fields regardless of what student record we are trying to create, right? So we have completed our step one. Okay, step one is done, but step two is not done. All right, step one is done. So that is to create this page layouts. All right, we did that to this guy as well. So let me move this around. This part is done. Now step two. Step two is create record types. Record types. All right, that's going to be our step two. Now, when we create the record types, we're also going to give them the same names. Okay, so the name of those record types are going to be domestic and also international. All right, we're going to say domestic student record type. All right, the other one's name is going to be international student record type. So right now we are at this step, So let's go back to our object manager and the student object. Then we will create on record types link. Okay, record types. Currently, we don't have any record types. Okay, we don't have any custom record types. And what we need to do is we need to create them by clicking on this new button. And let's give it a name. This master record type is the default one Salesforce creates for every object. That whenever you create any object, by default, it will have the master student record type. And when you create new custom record types, you will continue, you will start using those custom record types, and you won't much use this master record types anymore. Right now, whenever you're creating a new student, this is a master student record type, okay? But we're moving away from this because sometimes it has limitations, such as in this scenario. We are moving away from it so that we could have specific fields that needs to be shown to the user when they create international versus domestic student. So where we are at now, we are right now on this record types, and then we click on new button here, give a name to our new record type. I'm going to select this existing master record type, and then we will modify it. This is going to be by default selected. Give it a label. What is the label for record type? It is this one. You could just type domestic student, or you could give very descriptive name that says domestic student record type. Okay. API name gets populated by default, and I'm not providing any description. Make sure the active value is selected by default. And then we are making this available only those two profiles, right? Click next. All right. Now, for this domestic student record type, which page layout we want to assign? We want to assign this domestic student page layout, right? And select that page layout. That's why when you give names, make sure you give matching name to the record types as well as to the page layouts, so that you can match them easily like that. And then click next. So what's going to happen in this scenario is all the profiles who have access to this record types will see this student page layout. Sometimes you could select this option. In that scenario, when they select student record type, when they want to create it based on different profile, for different profiles, you could show different page layouts. For example, you could click here if you want to. You could click international over here if you want to, but that's not a requirement. In this scenario, we want this scenario. We want this to happen, which is regardless of what the users is, basically, regardless of which employee from which department is trying to create a domestic student record, they always needs to see this page layout, because on this page layout, we have those fields that are necessary for that record. And then click save. One record type is created, and it also got automatically assigned. So let's go back to this record types. And then we're going to create another one. Let's click on new. And let's give it a name. So the name for this one is going to be international student record type. So in this second time, when you create the second record type, this box is not by default selected. You have to make sure you manually select this. Otherwise, this record type will not be assigned, will not be available for the users to select. So we're making this available again for our student, test user, and also our admin user, which is myself, and click on next. And for this international student record type, I'm going to select the international student page layout and then click save. all right? So now what happens is, for example, if I navigate back to Students tab, okay, let me do a refresh before I do that. And whenever I try to create a new student, for example, a new student, it's not activated yet. So let me do a hard refresh. So from now on, whenever a user tries to create a new record type, the user will be given an option to choose from whether they want to create an international student or a domestic student. You see? Now I get this option. It's asking me which student record type I want to create. I'm going to go with international and then click next and scroll down. If I'm creating an international student, the social security number field should not be displayed on this page. Social security number field, the SSN field. Let's search for SSN, and it's not displayed here. You see, 0, did not find. But it does display all these visa-related fields, right? So I could go ahead, let's give it a name, which is international student. All right, and then let's say major is arts and all the other information. Let's just fill this out quickly and you basically get that idea, right? So this information for now is not available. Let's assume that and click save. International student record got created, right? International student got created. And similarly, if I try to create a domestic student, by default, this domestic student record type is selected for me. And I'm just going to click on next and give it a name. Let's say Mike Donny. And let's find that social security number field. You see the social security number field is here. All right. But the visa related fields are not here. The residency status is here. Let's say he is a citizen. Okay. Click save. All right. So we have created domestic and international student record types. And we saw that on each record or on each page layout, we saw only those fields that are applicable to international student and also domestic student, depending on which record type we chose to create.